ça passe en rouge.
Tu me dis quand c'est bon. C'est parti?
Let's go.
Let's go. Donc, je vais faire une petite présentation donc, à ce meetup très spécial puisqu'on accueille James Dell qui va nous parler, qui va nous présenter le visuel icon map. Très rapidement, pour planter le décor, on avait fait, il y a un petit peu plus de 2 ans déjà, un meetup consacré à Power BI et à la cartographie, donc, dans lequel on était revenu en détail sur pas mal de sujets autour de la carto. On vous a laissé le lien sur cette slide qui sera partagée après le meetup, et donc vous pourrez voir le meetup qui durait 1h30 à peu près. Je vais vous faire une synthèse, je vais essayer de vous faire une synthèse en quelques minutes, 3-4 minutes, pas plus, donc, et en quelques slides. Quand on parle de cartographie et de visuel de cartographie, alors que ce soit des visuels dans Power BI ou plus généralement dans toute application de carto, on a des objets très particuliers et on manipule quand même des informations géographiques très particulières. Et en gros, on va se retrouver avec 2 types de représentation de ces objets géographiques que vous connaissez bien d'ailleurs si vous utilisez Waze ou n'importe quelle autre application ou n'importe quel visuel de carto. Vous avez soit des représentations vectorielles, donc sous forme de points, de lignes, de polygones, pour indiquer par exemple le trafic routier, ou au contraire des représentations matricielles de type raster. Donc là, matriciel, c'est du pixel par pixel quasiment. C'est une grille de pixels, une couche de pixels qu'on met sur une carte pour représenter plutôt, par exemple, la qualité de l'air ou un indice de pollution. Donc globalement, on a ces 2 types d'éléments-là, et comment ça se passe lorsqu'on utilise ces éléments sur un visuel ou sur un logiciel de cartographie. C'est un petit peu différent de quand on utilise des visuels classiques. Les visuels classiques, on a le visuel qui s'affiche et puis on a de la donnée qu'on envoie. Là, la donnée, elle est un petit peu particulière. Donc en gros, on va avoir un certain nombre de couches qui sont soit de type raster, soit de type vectoriel. Donc ça peut être des points d'intérêt, ça peut être comme je vous ai dit, du trafic autoroutier. Généralement, les points d'intérêt, vous connaissez bien le visuel bitmap classique. On indique soit une position, soit une latitude, longitude. Donc ça, c'est assez simple. Et puis quand on va vers les lignes et les polygones, on indique un point de départ, une coordonnée de départ et d'arrivée. Quand on applique une couche de type raster, là, on a des données qui sont proposées généralement par un web service, qui sont mis à dispo pour nous en fonction d'une localisation. Et surtout, le point le plus important de tous ces visuels de cartographie ou de ces applications, c'est le serveur de cartographie. Vous avez vu dans chacun des visuels, en bas à droite, vous avez une petite indication qui vous indique d'où vient, quel est le serveur de cartographie qui fournit la carte. Actuellement, très souvent sur les visuels classiques, c'est Bingmap. Donc vous avez une petite indication maintenant de TomTom, puisque TomTom a été racheté par Bing. Pour ArcGIS, vous avez S3 par exemple. Et puis pour des visuels qui utilisent des serveurs de cartographie Open Data, vous avez souvent OpenStreetMap. Et donc c'est la combinaison de ces 3 éléments qui va faire que le visuel va pouvoir avoir un rendu. Juste avant de passer la main à James, juste pour vous donner une idée de comment sont stockées ces données-là. Les données vectorielles, on va avoir des formats qui ont été définis, qui sont standardisés, qui sont basés, certains sont basés sur du JSON ou du XML, GeoJSON notamment, dont vous avez un exemple, ou Keyhole Markup Language, le KML. Et pour les données raster, on a soit des données qui sont des images avec une information géographique, comme les GeoTIFF, ou des web services, donc qui ont été normalisés par un consortium international, l'Open GeoSpatial Consortium, avec, par exemple, des formats et des normes comme le WMS ou le WMTS. Juste pour terminer, pour vous donner, pour que vous puissiez visualiser à quoi ressemblent ces éléments-là, c'est un exemple du Webmap Tile Service, WMTS. En fait, c'est ce qui se passe lorsque vous voyez un indice de... Il y a un micro qui est ouvert. Hop. Merci. C'est ce qui se passe lorsque vous zoomez sur une carte qui vous affiche un indicateur, par exemple, de type raster, un indicateur de pollution, par exemple. Très souvent, vous avez une petite poignée soit de millisecondes, soit de secondes, quand vous zoomez, où la carte est redéfinie. En fait, votre carte, votre couche va être découpée en tuiles, et il va y avoir donc plusieurs niveaux, de la plus grande échelle à la plus petite échelle, et chaque fois que vous zoomez dans un niveau, vous allez avoir une redéfinition de cette carte-là. Donc ça, c'était pour vous donner rapidement un overview des particularités des visuels de type cartographie. Et maintenant, je vais laisser la parole à James. James, it's your turn. You can share your screen if you want.
Thank you very much, Joel. Let me do that, and give me a moment to move things out of the way.
Okay.
And I will start. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Great. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. In the interest of time, then let's get straight into it. I haven't got a big introduction slide. My name is James Dales, and I've been invited here to talk about one particular custom visual that I wrote a number of years ago. I'm going to cover, firstly, quickly, why do we have icon map? Why do we even need it? How is it constructed? And then predominantly through demos, I'm going to go through all of the different features. And then finally, at the end, I'm going to give a bit of a sneak preview and talk about what's next, and the forthcoming version of icon map. So why do we need a custom visual for mapping in Power BI when Power BI already has 5 map visuals that come with Power BI Desktop that are available for use? And I think the reason for that is all of these existing maps have some significant shortcomings. I'm not going to go through them all in detail. In this session, there isn't time to go and do a demo of what all of those shortcomings are. But essentially,
James, I think we have lost your screen. Yes.
Okay. Yep.
So we have a beautiful point of view on you. Yes, it's better.
We're back. Thank you for that. Good. So we have field map, which is probably great if you live in the United States, where most of the geography is understood and you can go down to states or zip levels. But if you live over in Europe, there's very little support for a lot of some of our bespoke geographies that we have in Europe. Shape map overcomes those limitations by allowing you to upload your own topo.json files into the map to have your own local geography, but then you lose the ability to have the underlying street map backgrounds. The map visual is limited in that it will only display circles or a heat map. There's no ability to display those bespoke map shapes or images or lines or some of the other things that we sometimes want to put on a map. The ArcGIS map is a very capable map visual, but to really get the best out of it, you need a paid subscription. And then finally, we have the newcomer, Azure Maps or Azure Maps. And this, whilst it's still in preview, it does feel very much like a preview visual. There are some very particular performance problems with it, and it's still not possible to even apply conditional formatting to the color of the circles that you plot on the map. So there's a long way to go with Azure Maps before it becomes a contender for a replacement even to the main map visual. And I think that is the reason why we have so many different options for map custom visuals now in Power BI. And I'm not going to go through all of these. The only thing I want to point out on this particular page is that I'm not going to talk about any of the custom visuals that are available in the custom visuals marketplace app source today. And that includes the one listed here called icon map. the version of icon map that is in AppSource is very, very old. In fact, it was one of the first custom visuals to appear in AppSource, and it has a very limited set of functionality. What I'm going to talk about today is the next version of icon map that isn't yet in AppSource. And the only place to acquire that is to go to www.icon-map.com. So that's what I'm going to cover today, and it's a much more capable visual than you can find in AppSource. Now, icon map started out a number of years ago following the request for one of our customers to be able to put images on a map. And that really sparked a whole series of events which led me to adding more and more functionality into this map visual as we had different requirements from different customers and different members of the community as well over the years. So let me deconstruct a map, or particularly an icon map, before we get into the demos. So I think Joel has covered a lot of this to some degree, so I'm going to do this quite quickly. So our map starts off with the map background. This is the underlying tile layer that makes up the street map imagery. And this is not an interactive layer. It's not bound to our data in any way. And it's made up by different map tiles, by different rectangles that as we zoom into different regions of the map, those sizes of those tiles don't change, but the amount of land that is displayed within each tile gets smaller. So we appear to zoom in and out. And these are called raster tiles. And that's what makes up our background imagery. And these have to be served from a remote server. These tiles are too big to cover the entire extent of the Earth at different zoom levels from within inside a Power BI custom visual. And in icon map, we also have the ability to overlay on top of that background image a set of transparent raster layers. So in this case, if we wanted some additional information about the railway network, we can overlay a open railway map layer on top of our background layer. And I'll show you some of the different options we have for those in a moment. And then finally, on top of those raster layers, we get to add our data-bound objects, our interactive objects onto the map. So these in this case are circles, but they can be other objects such as GeoJSON layers, images, or other shapes. So these are the three different map components. So let's get into having a look at how icon map deals with these different objects. So I'm going to jump straight into Power BI Desktop. Bear with me while I open it up. I'm going to start off completely from scratch, and we're going to build up a few examples of maps. So I've already imported icon map into Power BI Desktop, but essentially you just need to go to the iconmap.com website, download it, and then import the visual from a file, and it will appear down here as a bespoke custom visual. So let's add that onto my map. And then there are two mandatory fields that you need to provide in order to draw any map. That is a category field and the size field. So I'm going to, the data set that I'm going to use for this initial map is it's an open data set, and it's crime data based on London. Excuse me. So first of all, I'm going to add on the different regions of London into the category field, and I'm going to add in the amount of crime into my size field. Now at the moment we don't have enough information to draw any objects on the map because we've only got London boroughs and we've got the amount of crime. Now icon map doesn't do any kind of lookups. It won't go off and say, you've given me I don't know, Westminster it's not going to go off to a remote server and bring back the longitude and latitude for Westminster like the Big Maps visual or the Esri map visual does. There are no external calls outside of icon map other than for the background layers and for any GeoJSON layers. There's no risk of your data going off to a remote server. So whilst we've got the map background on, before we start worrying about what objects we're going to put on it, let's have a very quick look at the background options. So I'm going to go to the Formatting tab and expand out background layers, and you get quite an extensive choice of background layers. So we've got a number that are sourced from OpenStreetMap. Excuse me. I'm not going to go through them all, but you can see that we've got different ranges of colours, some with and some without labels. We've got open topo maps, so if you have the need to, for example, to display map contours, this is quite. Oh, it looks like my internet connection dropped. Can you still see my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Rural internet. Hopefully we'll manage, and the background layers will continue to draw. Let me go back to the background layers. And then we've got other options in here. I'm wondering if that drop in internet. There we go. No, we're back. We've got other options in here as well. The ones I need to call out are the Mapbox and Thunder Forest layers. Now, in order to use these, you need to go to the Mapbox and or Thunder Forest websites and obtain their API key. So let me just show you how that works. So I've got my Mapbox API key. If you scroll down, you'll find that there's a text box to paste in that API key. And then after that, you'll be able to select the various different Mapbox background layers. And I'm going to use this Mapbox Lite layer. It's worth showing, I mentioned earlier that we had that open railway map layer as well. So let me just show you what that looks like. So if I zoom in now, we have overlaid on top of our background layer much more detailed information about the railway network. We also have similar options for we even got it on the rivers. There we are. Look at that, for nautical navigation as well, and the weather information I will demo a little bit later on. We also have another option though for background layers, and while we're here over Paris, I think we were over Paris, were we? Yep. And that is WMS layers as well. So if you have access to a WMS server, then Icon Map will also support those WMS layers. So if I wanted to overlay, as an example, hopefully this will work. Or not. The demo gremlin's going to be with me today. That would be unfortunate. Ah, they will if I paste the wrong layer in. Do excuse me. So WMS layer, let me not put that one in. I'm going to put in that one, head back into Paris. And we should now hopefully have overlaid on our map all of the different bus routes in this particular example in Paris. And there are many different WMS servers available by generally public sector organisations, although this is Magellium. I'm not sure quite how to pronounce it correctly in French, but this is a French organisation that hosts hundreds of different WMS layers that you can overlay, providing additional context onto your map. But equally in the UK and other parts of the world, there are many different additional map layers you can add to give context onto your map. The one that I accidentally added a moment ago is deprivation data for each of the UK geographies. So as you can see, there are many to be added. But I'm going to remove that off now, and let's go back to having a look at our crime data back in London. Let me zoom. Well, don't need to worry about that because as soon as we start adding data, it will zoom into the context of our data. So my crime data, as you can see down here, exists of our London borough. These are the, I guess, the equivalent of the arrondissement, the regions that make up the different parts of London. And then I've got a longitude and latitude where the crime took place, and I've got the number of crimes. So I've already added the borough on there. Let's pull in the longitude and latitude. So latitude and longitude, I can just click these, and if they are appropriately named or you've specified the right geography type in your data model, then they should find the correct fields automatically. And what we have here is each of those individual longitudes and latitudes averaged within that particular London borough. So we get a circle placed on top of the centre of each borough. We can colour those circles in two different ways. So if we want to add some conditional formatting on there and we want to colour our circles based on the amount of crime, I can drag in the crime count into the circle colour range field and we'll get our circles coloured. And if I go down in here and expand out circles, you'll see that we've got those colour picker options there to change the colours and also the transparency of the circle and the border. If we want a bit more fine-grained control on those and we want to choose specific colours, then we can do that using DAX. So for example, I've created a DAX measure here that checks how much crime there is in each of the circles and returns back a RGB color accordingly. So let me drag that into the RGB fill color, and you'll see that our circles are now either colored in red or blue or cyan according to those RGB colors. And you can equally change the color of the border as well. Now it's worth also noting that this also gives you some control over the transparency of the objects as well. So as well as accepting RGB, it also accepts colors in RGBA format, and those last two digits represent the opacity. So if I put FF in, which is 255 in hexadecimal, we should get a solid red color as I click out. So now you can see our circles have gone completely opaque. So we've added circles on the map, but we've got lots of maps already in Power BI that are more than capable of adding circles. So I'm not particularly interested in going into any more detail on how to add circles onto a map in Power BI. I mentioned them because one of the key concepts of icon map is that we can display lots of different types of object on the map, and that includes circles. So I'm going to remove our circles by removing our longitude and latitude. What I actually want to show on here is a choropleth map, and I'm going to use a GeoJSON layer to achieve that. So let me just very quickly flip back to PowerPoint and just cover a couple of bits on GeoJSON, because this is probably the one area where I received the most requests for help in using icon map. So GeoJSON is essentially going to draw our boundaries of our London boroughs on the map, and it's represented by a JSON file, and within that JSON file each of the different London boroughs are represented by a set of coordinates. So each of those points on the map that is essentially a corner is represented by longitude and latitude, and then they're joined up by lines. And each of those individual polygons also has a set of properties, and these properties are what relates that shape in the GeoJSON file back to our Power BI data model. So we need something in that GeoJSON file that matches a value in the data model, and in icon map it has to match the field that is in the category area here. So in this case, I've added ID in the map we've got back in Power BI Desktop. It's the borough field, and as long as one of the items in our property area in the GeoJSON file matches what we've put in our category field, then it will be able to correlate the GeoJSON file with the data model. So let's jump back to Power BI Desktop and configure our GeoJSON layer. So I've got a layer that I'm already hosting on an external website. So I can go back into the formatting options, turn on GeoJSON, and you'll see here there's a text box to paste that layer in, and then you see straight away we get the London boroughs displayed. So let's go down and improve the formatting slightly. Let's change the line color to be black. The line width's probably okay as 1, and let's sort the fill colors out slightly. Let's start with white. So lower the amount of crime is a lighter shade, and then the darker area has more crime. So that was a very quick choropleth map. Let's add some drill down capability. So I have a more detailed set of polygons which represent the next level down inside our geography hierarchy. So let's go back to the GeoJSON area. I can add an additional level in here, and IconMap supports up to 5 levels of GeoJSON layers. Paste that in there and go back into our field configuration, and I'm going to drag in this next layer of geography in there. And and that will enable the drill down capability. So if I click on a particular area and choose drill down, we now get the next layer of geography represented by this second GeoJSON file. Now, let me expand the options in here. There's a few things that we can format. You can either choose a different fill color for those inactive shapes. Because we drilled into Westminster, all of the areas now outside of Westminster don't have a data item associated with them. So they all appear the same inactive color, and we can change that inactive color. Or actually, you may prefer to hide those shapes altogether that don't have a data item associated with them. And I would actually encourage doing that, because if you choose to hide them, then those shapes don't get rendered onto the map at all, which will improve performance. So now we've got a choropleth map with 2 layers of drill down. I can get into the detail and see on the map within Westminster that we've got this area here that has a higher crime than everywhere else in Westminster, but I still want to get into the detail. I want to understand where in Westminster those individual crimes are occurring. And I do have that information in the data set. I've got longitudes and latitudes which represent where those crimes are occurring. So what I'm going to do is add those onto the map as well. But I need to be able to combine those with the GeoJSON layer. So what I've got is a measure, or 2 measures actually, one for latitude and one for longitude, which will return a different answer according to the level of drill down. So I have a check which returns back the level, and just to show what that is, it's just a switch statement with a is in scope for which level of a hierarchy we've drilled down to. And then that returns, if you're at the London Borough level or this LSOA level, it will just return null. It returns a blank value. But if it's at that long lat level, the most detailed level, then it will return the actual longitude value. So the key here is, if you want to draw relate your data value to a GeoJSON shape, then the long and latitude must be null. But if you want to show a circle again, then it should return the actual long and latitude. So let's drag those in. Oops. So I'm going to drag long into longitude, lat into latitude. And I also need to add that extra level into the category. So I've got my next detailed level, which is just basically the long and latitude combined. So now I should be able to start all the way up in Westminster, drill down into this detailed level here, and now we get circles representing the exact locations of where those crimes are occurring. And we obviously can go back and colour those in the way that I showed before. But actually what might be even more interesting is to highlight some other things on the map. And I've got a bit of a trivial example here, but it will hopefully highlight the point. So maybe where there are particularly high levels of crime, I want to do something more than just draw a circle. Maybe I want to draw the intention directly to where those areas are. And in this case, I'm going to draw a picture of an old-fashioned police box. So I've got another DAX measure here called image. And again, it checks to see if we're at that most detailed level. And if there's more than 20 crimes in that particular location, otherwise, and if there is, then return my TARDIS picture, my police box. Otherwise, return null. And if it's returning null, then it's going to draw a circle. But if there are crimes over 20, then it's going to return this TARDIS measure. Let me just show you what's in that. This could relate to an external image on an external web server, but actually I've 64-bit encoded my image, so it's held within my Power BI file, so I don't need to go out and refer to an external object. So let's drag that image field onto my map configuration in this icon URL field, and you'll see that those larger circles have now been replaced by police boxes. So that's quite, I mean, this is obviously probably not the best use of the capability, but you can see here that now we have two different types of object on the same Power BI file. And in fact, we could have extended that and overlaid these circles on top of a GeoJSON file if we'd wanted to as well. So let's take images a little bit further and have a look at a completely different example of how we can build quite an effective report using images on the map. So I'm going to pull in a different Power BI desktop file now. And this is a completely different data set. This is data acquired from the FlightAware API. And I call the API and have returned back every single plane that is currently in the air. Now, there aren't too many of these at the moment because of COVID. Normally there'd be far too many planes to effectively show on the map, but at the moment these are the only planes that are currently flying. So let's start building up our icon map. So I've got a unique ID for each of my planes. So let's start off by adding that into the category field. And I've got the longitude and latitude of where those planes currently are. So let's add those onto the map. And in order for icon map to draw anything, we still have that mandatory size field. Now, I want all my planes to be the same size. So actually, I'm going to cheat and just pull in flight ID, which will default to a count. So it will just return a number 1 for every single plane. And straight away, we get circles now representing where each of our planes are. But I don't want circles, I want a plane. So I've got a small plane icon hosted on an external web server. So I've created a very simple DAX measure with that URL hard-coded into it of that plane image. And I'm going to drag that into the icon URL field. And it looks like all of our data points have disappeared. Actually, they haven't, they're just very small. So let me go back and configure the size of those. So it's actually drawing all the planes still. It's just they're only 5 pixels in size. So let's increase those to something like 20. Now we can see all of our planes where they are. It's a start, but it does look like all of the planes are flying to the North Pole. So let's see if we can improve that, because in our data set, we have the heading, we have the direction that those planes are currently pointing. And in icon map, we can rotate an image around 360 degrees. So if I pull in that rotation field, the heading field, into the rotation area here, all of our planes are now facing in the direction of travel. Now this is a nice start. I can see where the planes are, but it would be good to understand where the planes are coming from and where they're traveling to. And I have that information in the data set. I've got the destination and the origin. So let's add that information onto the map as well. So I'm going to draw a solid line from where the plane started, the origin, to where it is now. So let me pull in the latitude and longitude into the solid line fields. So that will draw a line from that point to where the plane is now. And then, also I've done the destination. Let's do that the other way around. And I'm going to draw a dotted line to where it's going to. So let me pull in the latitude and longitude back there. So now we should have two lines. Let me zoom into one plane so it's a little bit clearer. Let's pick that one. So we now have a plane flying from Spain to Mexico. But planes, well, let's see if we can improve the formatting of this slightly, because one of the options we have is to make those lines follow the curvature of the Earth. So I can turn on this geodesic feature. Let's change the line color slightly. Let's make it dark blue and a little bit narrower. Just to show you that works for all of those, and you can really see those curved lines now. Let's add some additional context onto our map as well, though, while we're here. So I can see the plane now is just approaching the Bahamas. Let's go and add some weather information on here as well. So let me add in my Open Weather Map API key. So if you go to openweathermap.org, you can sign up there for an API key. I'll paste that in, and then that gives me the ability to add these Open Weather Map layers on top. So let's add on some cloud cover and also some rain as well. So we can now see that the plane has probably just flown through a bit of a storm here, and it looks like there's some weather coming in off the Atlantic in towards France at the moment. Now I've got one extra piece of information that I want to plot on my map as well. And this, at the moment, we've only got 3 points. When you draw a line using this line functionality, let me pull up a slide. We provide 3 points. We provide the point where we've got our object, whether that's a circle or an image, and then we provide, and we can optionally rather provide an additional point from here to another point for a dotted line, and then the same for a solid line. But actually, I want to draw the flight path that the plane intended to fly, and I have that also in the data set. So let me jump over and show you that for some flights we have 2 rows in our data set. Let's find this Iberia flight that we're looking at. And you can see here for the same flight number, I've got 2 rows in the data set with slightly different IDs. This is the row that we're currently drawing. We've got flight ID, we've got the longitude and latitude of where it is now, and we've got an image of the plane. I also have this second row of data, which has this line string here, and these are a series of longitude and latitude points which represent the flight path, the different waypoints that the plane intended to fly. So let's also add that onto our map as well. Now this needs to go in the same place as the image field goes. So you can either draw an image or one of these well-known text line strings. So let me take that out and replace it with a measure which either returns the waypoints if it's a waypoint line, or the plain image if it's a row with the image included. And now you can see we get a second line drawn on our map, which represents that line string. So all of those different points representing, the path that the plane had intended on flying, overlaid on top of the weather. So hopefully that whets the appetite slightly of what we can do with this well-known text capability. So let me introduce that in a little bit more detail. So well-known text is not a new thing at all. In fact, it's the way, well, firstly, it's an industry standard used by lots of different spatial technologies, and that includes SQL Server. So if you create a field in a SQL database of type geography, then you can natively export shapes in well-known text format. And actually, if you connect icon map to a SQL database through Power BI, which has geography fields in it, then icon map will instantly understand how to draw those different shapes. And icon map will support, in well-known text format, points, so multi-points. So these are a collection of points. So you can have on a single row of data a cluster of points. Line strings, which is what I've just demonstrated with that flight path, but actually you can have multiple lines within a single data object. And polygons, and likewise multi-polygons. So if you have an object that's made up of multiple polygons, and a good example of this is perhaps a country that might be made up of multiple islands, then they can also be represented in a single object. So let's explore these a little bit more in Power BI. So let's jump back to Power BI Desktop, and I just want to show you a dynamic example of these, and then I will go on and show you some more in-depth pre-built reports using well-known text. So this is a very simple example, but I want to show this quickly just to show the completely dynamic nature of these. So I've got a polygon. Polygon's made up of 4 points, and those 4 points are made up by Power BI parameters, which I can change using these slicers. And you can see that my DAX polygon, which is essentially just joining those different 4 corners together in real time into a measure, and generating this piece of text here representing the polygon, and that is just applied as a shape into the well-known text field, and I can change those on the fly. So let me bring up some other examples. So, and these aren't just of well-known text. I just wanted to show some other examples of icon map in use to give a bit more flavour as to some of the functionality available. And some of the techniques actually as well for working with icon map. So this report I built right at the beginning of last year, when we'd just come out in the UK of our first lockdown, and coronavirus cases had gone back down again, and we were just starting to see instances of a potential second wave. So I built this report to try and identify where that second wave might be happening. So I will stop for questions in a moment. I can see them coming through. I'll run through these examples and then I'll go back through the questions. So these areas here highlighted in red represent where you can see a second wave. The ones in yellow are where cases were increasing but not enough to represent a second wave, and then the ones in grey where there wasn't a particular new increase being seen. And I've set up some buttons at the bottom to cycle between different icon map configurations. So it's all the same data, but it's using different icon map features to represent that in different ways. So we've got a choropleth map using well-known text with a gradient scale, and this is just a static image. It's not part of the map. The map currently doesn't have a legend capability. And the same here, but using the color formatting or the bubbles. And then I can choose one of these points. So let's choose Leicester, which actually turned out to be where our second wave started. And then I can drill through into a more detailed page where we've got, again, another choropleth map, but filtered on Leicester. This is actually using a bespoke map box layer. So one of the options you can do in icon map, which I didn't really show, but it's probably worthwhile just mentioning quickly if I bring desktop up on the background configuration. If you choose custom, then you can paste in your own URL to a different tile server of your choice, and that does support Mapbox custom layers as well. So I created a layer in Mapbox which had these blue circles representing where all of the schools were in the UK. So we had some additional context in the background. And then likewise, I've got another version of that which uses a WMS layer, which has that deprivation data I accidentally added to the map earlier. And then there's some other WMS layers as well. So I quite like the use of bookmarks here to change the configuration of the different properties on icon map. So I've actually got 3 different visuals here, but it looks like you're just changing the way that it's displayed. And then another example that I just want to show very quickly, let me just refresh this, is again another well-known text map, which is representing a choropleth map. This time it's showing broadband speeds of all of the different areas in the UK. But the one thing I wanted to show was firstly, the use of a second map overlaid on top of another map, which means we can click on a region on there and it will zoom the other map into that region, but also the addition of dynamic labels. So this isn't drilling down this map, it's just zooming into it. And then I've got a DAX query which checks whether we're only viewing one particular region. And if it is, it knows there's enough detail there we've zoomed in far enough to be able to make labels worthwhile. And I think this might be the only map visual for Power BI that's capable of putting labels on top of a choropleth map. It's probably worth showing that one. And then finally, how are we doing for time? Yeah, okay. The final example for this, which probably shows well-known text to its full extent, is this example here. So I've pulled in a huge amount of data into this report. We have 15 years worth of house or property sales for every single property in London, plus 5 years of crime, demographic data, and another data set which I'll explain in a moment. So let's just have a look what this looks like. Let me zoom into the overview page just to show one particular technique where we've got more than one choropleth map on the page at the same time. And if I highlight, my report catches up. If I highlight a particular area on the map, you'll see that that same area is highlighted on the other 2 maps as well, which is quite a nice feature. But the one that I really want to show, let's drill into to this one, is I've pulled out from the OpenStreetMap base layer every single object that makes up a OpenStreetMap map and imported those in as well-known text along with all of their associated metadata. So I've got a grey Mapbox base layer on here, but anything that is in color on this map is actually part of the Power BI data model, and it's stored in a SQL server behind the scenes, which I'm querying using direct query, so that I've got every single object in London in my data model. And that includes every road, every tree, every river, every railway line, every building, every school, all explained in the data. So I can mouse over any of these objects on the map and see all of the information that we store about those different properties, whether it's, what's this? This is a college. We've got a park here. What's this? This is a school. And then if I want to see the associated house prices, I can either click an individual building, or I can either use the lasso technique to highlight a whole range of buildings, and then that will filter out the report to just show house prices for those particular properties that I've highlighted. So I think this is probably a good point to pause for questions. I do want to demo very quickly the next version of Icon Map, but let's cover questions first, and then I'll close in a few minutes with a very quick demo.
We have almost 10 questions, so I will take it. But if if you want to open your mic, you can. But it was a question from Nicolas. It will remain free except the layer like Mapbox where you need a key, but will Icon Map remain free in the future?
Yes, absolutely. I've no plans to ever charge for Icon Map. It counts as one of my community contributions for becoming an MVP, and as soon as I start charging for it, it won't. So yeah,
and for that
I've
you
no plans to charge.
Second question, the maximum number of objects that you can put on a map, and we see there's a lot of objects on that one.
Good question. So technically it's limited to 30,000, which is a Power BI limit. You will find that if you try and put 30,000 very complicated polygons on the map, you'll have performance issues. But if you want to plot 30,000 simple polygons or just circles, then it should be okay. So just be sensible with the amount of data, but 30,000 is the hard limit.
Okay. Okay. Other question is about it's about the WMS layer. So is there a specific version, or do you support every version? Maybe I don't ask the question in the good way, but
yeah. So WMS is a bit of an interesting one. So let me pull up that Magellan list of capabilities. So this is requesting all of the different features available on that one WMS server, and you can see that there are many different types of image provided, lots of different projections. So no, Icon Map doesn't support everything. Okay. It has to be WGS84 projection, and it will only support either PNG tiles, or if you need vector, it should also support SVG as well.
Okay, so I guess it's documented on the Icon Map website.
It is a little bit.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Other question. Can you show how to add the label to the chloropet shape?
Yeah. Let me do that very quickly. So let's go back to our choropleth map. Let's hope this works. What we have here is a place to add in a measure containing the label that you want to add. So I should be able to add the borough field on here, and then go back into the formatting options and turn on, here we are in here, okay. Turn on labels, which is not, oh, there we are, labels turn on. And then you've got the formatting options to change the background and the borders and the font size and the colors and the transparency.
Good. So 4 more questions, and then I see David raising his hand. So about the WKT format, do you support every kind of polygons or shape? So you talk about point, multi-point, polygon, line string.
Yep. So we support these. The only thing that we can't support is I can't remember the exact WKT term, but where you have multiple types of object in the same same L. So you can't have a line string and a polygon in the same object. It's just one type at a time.
Okay, good. Easy one. Can we change the line width? For example, in your demo, but the airplane.
You can. So I haven't got suitable data to do it, but there's a line width field here. So just drag in a measure with a number value representing the number of pixels, and you can format each line individually. And that also works on well-known text objects as well. Okay.
Other question about the can you use the ISO code or the name of the countries instead of so you demonstrate that with the borough, but it works with
I mean, it has no ability to understand those names. It has to relate to something in the data set. So if you've got a GeoJSON file that has those names in, then fine, but it won't go off and and work it out.
I don't know if it answers your question. It was Imad who answered the question. And the last one for my part, and it's a big one, so I get it for the end. It's about having a background layer that can be maybe a warehouse or a map of a place, and having position relative on that kind of map. So Frédéric asked that question.
Yeah, so if I understood, it's where you've got a background layer that's not a street map, it's inside a building.
Yes.
So understood. And that that's the third time I've been asked for this functionality this week. It's not there at the moment in this version. 2 problems. One, you can't zoom in that far enough on this map. And secondly, usually you don't want to represent the places in a building with longitude and latitude. You normally want XY coordinates. And at the moment, Icon Map only supports one projection. It's coming in the new version, but not straight away.
Hi, James. It's Frederick, the guy who asked the question. It's because I went to a company just last week, and it was a question that the company needs. It was especially to geolocalize inside the building where not only the package are, but the people are, because they were managing people like that. So I understand totally what you said about the coordinate and so on. It should be very difficult to plot that on a map. I understand why it's so difficult. But yes, I'm sure a lot of companies will be interested by this.
It's definitely functionality I want to provide, but it's not a simple thing to do. But it will come.
It's another area, and the last question, but you raise your hand, David, so you can ask it directly.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, it's 3 questions. 2 of them are easy ones, yes or no, and the third one is the real question. The first one, is there any restriction on report server usage?
No, it works in report server. Yeah.
Perfect. The highlighting the zoom area. Highlighting an area, does it make a zoom inside this area as well?
You can choose. So there are quite a lot of options for both zooming and highlighting behavior. So you'll find enough options there to configure the behavior that you need.
So I can select a region, kind of? myself, and it zooms inside, right? Does it?
Yes, if you want it to, yeah.
Okay, perfect. And in my case, I have 10,000 points on a map. These are the gas stations in total 10 different icons.
Okay.
All of them are coming from URLs.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to, instead of having the URLs inside the database, convert them to an SVG like you showed us, and to put them inside the database so it's quicker?
Yes. So if you need to, well, either have them as SVGs, vector images, but if you can't get those, then let's Google, because I don't know anyone, but if you go to a 64-bit
or maybe 64
encoder,
mm-hmm.
then you can usually drag and drop a let's do an image, sorry, 64-bit image encoder. There we are. You can drag your image on here and it will spit out in return. What did I use it on that TARDIS? Your image in this format, which you can then either store in your database or just hard-coded in a measure.
Okay, perfect. In the database is kind of the image type that I put this string?
Just varchar or text.
Varchar or text. Thank you.
Yep.
That's perfect. Thank you very much, by the way.
Good. And to be complete, the last one that pop up in the chat, it's about is it supported on Power BI embedded?
Yes.
Good.
So
no more question.
Brilliant. So I just want to very quickly then show or talk about the next version of Icon Map. I know we're out of time, so I'll be as quick as possible, but I think it's important to talk very quickly about what's happening next. That one. So I'm currently rewriting Icon Map completely from scratch because things have moved on in the 5 years since I wrote it originally, and the Power BI API has changed to a point that I need to completely rewrite the visual to make use of new features like conditional formatting, and it will break existing maps, so it needs to be a new version. There's also a new version of the underlying mapping framework leaflet that the visual built on top of, which will provide new possibilities and features, such as being able to create maps inside buildings, which I wanted to take advantage of. And as you've seen, it's quite complicated to configure Icon Map at the moment, especially with some advanced scenarios with lots of different types of object. So I've started rewriting Icon Map. I imagine it will take another few more weeks to finish. Let me just pull in a few points quickly, and I just want to show the kind of things that have changed. So this is the crime data again. And rather than having lots and lots of different configuration fields on here, I'm attempting to allow conditional formatting for everything. So if you want to change the color of the circles, rather than having to have lots of different measures and drag them into different places according to the behavior, now you can use the out-of-the-box Power BI conditional formatting to do that. You can also set transparency through here as well. Circle size is something that people have very much asked for. So if you zoom in on here, you'll see the circles always stay the same size, regardless of the zoom level. But sometimes you want a circle to be, for example, 1 kilometer. So if I change that to 1,000 and change the circle size to fixed, this circle is now 1 kilometer wide. So I can zoom in and out, and it will always take up the same amount of space on the map, that kind of thing. There'll be other options in here, but also to reduce complexity, the ability to change a circle into well-known text or an image, again, is conditionally formatted. So you can either, literally type in your URL in there. Oops. main.png, I think was the one I used earlier. The size is wrong because it's 1,000 pixels, but you get the idea. But again, you can conditionally format the images in there, or well-known text, and all of the different settings, whether to include an item in the zoom, or whether it has a tooltip, or whether it's even selectable. All of those are going to be overridable through conditional formatting on a point-by-point basis. So it will provide lots more flexibility and functionality. And then what I will do is I will remove the very old version of icon map in app source and replace it with this new version. So that's the plan. Okay, so that's everything I wanted to show. We're only 6 minutes over, so I've not done too bad. It's usually a lot worse.
It's the 6 minutes of Joel, so it's his fault. I'm not sure it's still there, Joel. The last question is about adapting the size of the circle with the zoom level, but I think that's on the actual icon map. So as you're working on that feature, I don't know if it works on the current icon map.
The fixed size, as in kilometers or meters, yeah, you can't do that currently. That's only available in the new one.
Okay, so does it answer, David? So another question about timeline for that new version.
Yeah, it depends how much free time I can make, but there's a lot of demand, and it's in my best interest to do it because I think it will reduce the amount of support requests I get, because it will be easier to use. And to give you an idea, I get about 4 or 5 requests a day at the moment for support. Usage has exploded over the last 6 months. So I need a better version out there. So as soon as possible. Realistically, it's going to be a month or 2 to finish it, and then I'll be at the mercy of the Power BI team to get it approved.
Good. So I think it's time to leave if there's no more question, and people will wait impatiently your new version. So many thanks for that very, very great presentation, because you have a wonderful visual, very, very powerful. So many thanks to share with us about that component. So see you maybe another meetup or elsewhere.
Yes.
The chance to be in the same company as you, so we can meet after.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for persevering with my English.
Yeah, no problem. You're welcome. I just stopped the recording for the YouTube, and see you at the next meetups, guys.